Have you ever been underestimated? The kind of underestimation where people judge you based on your appearance, your skin, or the way you speak. Imagine a young black girl, full of promise but still trapped in a world that looks down on her, mocking her dreams and disregarding her abilities. It's a feeling many of us know all too well, especially when surrounded by people who think they have it all. In a lavish mansion nestled in the wealthy part of town, the Westbrook family was known for their opulence. Their home stood tall, reflecting the family's success. Marble floors, golden chandeliers, and a sprawling garden that stretched on for acres. 4 generations, the Westbrooks had amassed fortune and power. They were the definition of high society, proud of their legacy and status. One evening, the Westbrooks gathered for a dinner party, as they often did. Elegant guests in tuxedos and gowns filled the hall, exchanging pleasantries and boasting about their latest conquests in business. Among them was the latest addition to their household, the young black girl they had recently taken in as a housekeeper, Tanya. Tanya wasn't new to hard work. Raised in a modest neighborhood, she had spent her life doing what she could to help her family. Her mother, a schoolteacher, had always emphasized the importance of education, even though they had little money to spare. Tanya had dreams, big ones. She wanted to go to college, make something of herself, and prove to the world that she could rise above the poverty she was born into. But here she was, in the middle of this extravagant world, scrubbing floors and serving the guests of the Westbrook family. To the elite guests, she was invisible, a mere servant, someone to fetch drinks and keep the house spotless. Tanya's polite smile never wavered, but her eyes told a different story. She had endured mockery, whispers behind her back, and sometimes outright ridicule. The Westbrooks, despite taking her in, weren't much different. Mrs. Westbrook, a woman in her 50s, was the epitome of grace and arrogance. Her perfectly styled blonde hair, her diamond-studded earrings, and her haughty smile made it clear to everyone that she was in control. Her husband, Richard Westbrook, was a powerful businessman, often speaking of investments and strategies over dinner. Their 2 children, Jared and Brooke, had inherited their parents' sense of entitlement. Jared, an arrogant young man in his 20s, often made comments about the people he employed, while Brooke, his younger sister, simply rolled her eyes whenever Tanya passed by, making sure her disdain was evident. One evening, Tanya was called into the dining room to refill glasses. As she moved silently among the guests, a conversation caught her ear. It was Mrs. Westbrook, laughing melodiously, her voice cutting through the hum of the room. "Can you imagine?" Mrs. Westbrook chuckled, turning to her guests. "This girl thinks she's going to go to college. Can you believe it? What does she know about the real world?" The guests around her laughed politely, nodding in agreement. Tanya's heart dropped. She had heard whispers before, but hearing it directly from Mrs. Westbrook was a bitter pill to swallow. "I just don't understand how someone like her thinks she can be anything more than a housekeeper," Mrs. Westbrook continued, oblivious to Tanya's presence. "She's sweet, but we all know her place." Tanya's grip tightened around the glass she was holding. She wanted to run, wanted to flee from a room where every moment of her hard work was being reduced to nothing but a joke. But instead, she stood frozen, her face a mask of professionalism. As she turned to leave, Jared added, "Yeah, it's cute that she dreams big, but we all know she'll never get anywhere. The world doesn't work that way." Brooke snickered, clearly amused by her brother's words. Maybe she should just stick to scrubbing floors. That's about all she's good for. The laughter that followed echoed in Tanya's ears as she walked out of the room. But inside, something was stirring. The anger that she had kept bottled up for years was starting to bubble to the surface. They didn't know her. They didn't understand her. And they never would. Tanya wasn't just some black girl cleaning their floors. She was someone who had fought tooth and nail to get where she was, and she wasn't about to let anyone define her future. The Westbrooks had underestimated her. They thought they had the upper hand, that they could mock her and dismiss her dreams. What they didn't know was that Tanya wasn't going to remain in their world for long. She had bigger plans. The next few weeks were more of the same. Tanya worked tirelessly, making sure everything was spotless, but she couldn't shake the mockery of that evening. She spent her nights studying. At first, it was just a way to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the Westbrook house. But slowly, it became her escape, a chance to prove to herself and to the world that she was capable of more than they ever imagined. One afternoon, while she was cleaning the study, Tanya overheard Richard Westbrook talking on the phone with an associate. He was speaking in hushed tones, but the words were clear enough. Yes, the merger is almost finalized. It's going to make us billions. I'm telling you, this will cement our place as the wealthiest family in the city. Tanya's ears perked up. She knew that the Westbrooks were wealthy, but she hadn't realized the extent of their power. They were about to make a deal that would take their fortune to the next level. Curiosity gnawed at her. Tanya had always been interested in business, finance, stocks, investments. Her mother had taught her the basics when she was young, and while she didn't have the resources to study it in depth, she was a fast learner. She had always dreamed of a future where she didn't just serve people like the Westbrooks, but where she stood on the other side of the table, calling the shots. She couldn't resist. She opened Richard's desk drawer and found the documents he had left carelessly scattered inside. There were financial papers, proposals, contracts, figures that seemed foreign to her. But Tanya's sharp mind began to piece them together. The more she read, the clearer it became. She was looking at a merger between two major companies, a deal that would change the face of the business world forever. Tanya's eyes widened as she continued reading. There was a loophole, a tiny detail that Richard had missed. If exploited correctly, it could reverse the merger in favor of whoever controlled it. And as fate would have it, Tanya was the one who could make it happen. Tanya stood there, her heart pounding. The power to shift the business world was in her hands, but she had to be careful. If the Westbrooks knew what she knew, they would stop at nothing to crush her. But if she played her cards right, this could be the key to everything she had ever dreamed of: freedom, success, and revenge. As she left the study, Tanya's mind raced. How would she reveal her secret? Would the Westbrooks be ready for what was coming? The next day, Tanya made a decision. She wasn't going to just sit back and let them mock her anymore. She was going to change everything. But little did she know, the Westbrooks weren't the only ones watching. Someone else had caught wind of the same information she had uncovered, and they had plans of their own. Tanya stepped outside the high-rise office building, her heart racing with anticipation. The weight of the decision she had just made, her agreement with Thornton Enterprises, was still settling in, but it felt like the first step towards something monumental. She had spent years serving the Westbrooks, enduring their mocking glances and dismissive remarks. She had been underestimated, overlooked, but that was about to change. Tanya was no longer the girl who scrubbed floors in their mansion. She wasn't the invisible servant. She was the one holding the power now. She knew that the Westbrooks would never accept her as an equal, not in the way they saw themselves. But now, Tanya was more than just a housekeeper. She was a key player in the business world, with leverage over their multi-million-dollar merger. As she exited the building, Tanya couldn't help but smile to herself. The Westbrooks were about to get a lesson in humility. They had mocked her for her dreams, belittled her aspirations, and dismissed her as nothing more than a servant. But Tanya had something they didn't: the knowledge of their deepest secret, the loophole that would change everything. The next day, Tanya returned to the Westbrook mansion. Her steps felt different this time, as though each movement was deliberate, every step filled with purpose. She no longer felt like she was simply walking through their world. She was moving through it with confidence, a confidence she had never had before. When she entered the grand foyer, Richard Westbrook was there, pacing impatiently. The deal was approaching its final stages, and he was eager to get everything settled. But something in his posture told Tanya that he had no idea what was about to hit him. "Tanya," Richard said sharply when he saw her, his voice carrying an edge. "I need you in the kitchen. Now." Tanya stood tall and met his gaze, a quiet strength radiating from her. She didn't flinch. "Actually, Mr. Westbrook, I'm here for something far more important than cleaning." Richard looked at her, confused, then irritated. "What's this nonsense now?" He stepped toward her, his face hardening with the tone of authority that had always worked on her before. You think you can just walk around here and start calling shots? You're a housekeeper. Know your place. Tanya's smile was slow but knowing. She could see the anger rising in Richard's chest, but it didn't faze her. She knew something he didn't. I think you should sit down, Mr. Westbrook, Tanya said calmly. We need to talk. Richard hesitated, then motioned to a chair by the grand fireplace. Tanya followed, sitting down across from him, the documents from the merger still hidden in her bag, but burning in her mind. Richard sat across from her, clearly irritated and anxious. He had no idea what was coming. You've been making a huge mistake, Tanya began, her voice steady. But it's not too late to fix it. Richard's eyebrows shot up. What the hell are you talking about? She opened her bag and pulled out the merger documents, placing them in front of him. The tension in the air was thick as Richard stared at the papers, then back at her, confused. I know about the loophole in the merger, she said softly. And I know how it can be used to give you the upper hand. But you won't be the one who controls it. Richard's face hardened, his lips pressing into a tight line. What are you talking about? You've been reading my private documents? How dare you? Tanya didn't flinch. I'm not just any housekeeper, Richard, and I'm not going to stay in the shadows anymore. I've worked hard for this, harder than anyone knows, and now I have something that changes everything. You were wrong to underestimate me. Richard looked at her, fury building in his eyes, but there was also a flicker of fear. For the first time, he was starting to realize that Tanya wasn't just a powerless servant anymore. You've always thought I was beneath you, Tanya continued, that I was just someone you could mock. But the truth is, I've been learning, growing, and now I'm standing on the same level as you. And I'm offering you a chance to save your company, but only if you play by my rules. Richard scoffed. And why the hell should I listen to you? Because, Mr. Westbrook, Tanya said, her voice firm now, I've been given an opportunity that you couldn't even dream of. I've partnered with Thornton Enterprises. If you want to salvage the deal, if you want to save your precious company from disaster, you'll have to play my game now. You don't control the merger anymore. I do. Richard's face drained of color as the realization sank in. The fear that had once been a flicker was now a full-blown panic. You're bluffing. You're just a housekeeper. You think you can take control of a global merger? Tanya leaned forward, locking eyes with him. I'm not bluffing. I've already spoken with the people who matter. I've secured my position, and now you can either stand aside, or I can make sure you lose everything. You want to treat me like I was nothing. Now, you're going to see what happens when you underestimate someone. Tanya stood up and walked toward the door, her steps sure and deliberate. But before she reached the threshold, Richard's voice stopped her. You think you could just take control like that? Richard's voice was strained, almost pleading. You're nothing but nobody. You think you have the power to bring me down? You're wrong. You'll never get away with this. Tanya paused, turning to face him. Her expression was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I already have, she said, her voice low and steady. You never knew what I was capable of, Richard. You never gave me a chance to show you. With that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving Richard to stew in his anger and disbelief. Tanya had done it. She had taken control. The following days were a whirlwind. The Westbrooks tried to fight back, scrambling to regain their position, but the truth was Tanya had outmaneuvered them. The merger was overturned in Thornton's favor, and Tanya was given a seat at the table. Her life, once confined to the margins, had now catapulted her into the spotlight. The very people who had mocked her were now at her mercy. Weeks passed, and Tanya found herself in a new world, one where she had power, influence, and respect. The Westbrooks had no choice but to accept her authority. The dinner parties that had once been the stage for their mockery were now the venue for Tanya to command the room. Richard Westbrook had to watch as she sat at the head of the table, making decisions, guiding the future of the company he thought was his birthright. His eyes, once full of arrogance, now held only resentment. But Tanya wasn't interested in revenge. Not anymore. She had bigger goals. She had worked hard to get where she was, and she was determined to use her newfound power for good, to bring about real change in the business world. She had the resources, the respect, and the vision to do more than just sit at the table. She would reshape the business world. And this time, she would never be underestimated again. Tanya's journey reminds us all that we are more than the labels people try to place on us. Never let anyone's mockery define your worth. If you're ready to take control of your own story and rewrite the rules, subscribe for more stories of empowerment, success, and resilience. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder of their power, and comment below with your thoughts. What would you do if you were in Tanya's shoes?